There was a school in Tuscaloosa, Central Baptist Church, had a school for a couple, maybe 5 years. So he began to research the idea, and he brought it before the church. It was passed unanimously that we would start our own school. They had a daycare here, but didn't have any grades. And I had worked in Brother Roloff's kindergarten sometime before. And so the idea of a kindergarten to go along with the daycare. And sure enough, we had about 25 kids the first year. And we met upstairs in the church building here, where Mrs. Lewis's office is. The next year, we had it in this room. And I had about 32 children that year. And it was wall-to-wall children. And it was in the middle of that year that we started a lunchroom, and I had to give up my kindergarten class to Ms. Garrison.
We had that right here in this room, in the basement. And we had a room full of children. And then it moved into where the choir room is now. Janet was a daycare lady, and I taught kindergarten. And she didn't teach that next semester. So Brother LeGrand decided that I could teach kindergarten in where the choir room is now, and then where Brother Dickey's office is was baby beds, and I could watch the daycare in there. And then when they were taking a nap, I could go clean toilets. So that's what I did.
We also that year started some grades, the other grades in our school. And that was 1970. So our kindergarten started in 1969.
Brother LeGrand said, okay, I don't have teachers for 5th grade, for a high school class, and for band. So I don't know how I can fill them, but you're going to have to teach one of them. Well, I was in kindergarten, and I loved the little children, and I just cried because I didn't want to leave the kindergarten.
So that's when Mrs. LeCroy came on the scene. She took the kindergarten class.
I had a 10th grade homeroom, and I taught 10th grade English, and I had the band. And so that was a real change for me.
Our first school rooms were here in this church building, very, very small, very crowded. But days when I had to learn all of the subjects that I'm teaching now, and really it was another college education.
Classes, we had to walk in the rain. When it was raining, we'd have to walk from the church over to one of the buildings, walk upstairs. I'm traipsing up all these steps, and they're telling us to be really quiet because somebody's living downstairs. And
you can imagine, we had the elementary school and the high school classes here in the sanctuary, and we had classes in houses that were purchased in the community here for faculty, I think, and staff people. And the staff and faculty lived downstairs, and we had classrooms upstairs.
Where the radio station is now used to be Grace Sutton's 2nd grade class, and there were other classes up there.
Well, actually, the TV room right here used to be the school office. Miss Shirley Spain and Miss Karen Walker used to be here. And then in one of these corner offices was Brother LeGrand's office back here. And so I've had to come down here several times to get paddlings from him.
They were in the process of talking about building a school building for the students. We had outgrown the church.
Now, he couldn't get a loan, an outright loan for that. There were bonds being sold, and we had a successful sale.
And got a permit to build the Christian school.
We bought it as a Butler building, and they put up the framework. And then the men did the finishing. They put in the walls, the wiring.
Brother Fred, Brother Brock, Brother Bob, myself, and we just went to work. We all had a big time coming in there to work and working 2 or 3 or 4 hours at night to get to school. And it hadn't fallen down yet, so we must have done a pretty good job.
Seeing the building that we have now in the gymnasium, when those were houses, and see the houses be torn down.
My husband and I came and helped to tear down the houses, and we were taking the bricks and cleaning them And we asked Brother LeGrand if we could take them home and make a patio out of them. And he said, sure, you know, they were just going to haul them off. And then when we did that, he decided, well, why don't we make a patio out in front of the school? And so that's where those bricks came from, was from the houses they tore down. So we had to clean them then and make the patio, put down heavy plastic and made that.
And then the foundation laid, and actually helping to in a very small part to help with some of the construction and all as the building was put up, and see the moving from the houses and the church over to the classrooms there.
And actually we carried down the old desks out of the houses, and we had a little painting party, and you got a little mitt you put in your hand, you dipped it down the paint bucket, and you wiped it on the desktop, and you painted the desk. So we remodeled the desks before we brought them in the new building.
Well, the gym came about. Brother Jack, he wanted a gym for the kids to play in rainy days and things like that and all. My name came about like this. He said, we've got to raise several $1,000s. I said, well, give me a bunch of bonds, and we'll see what we can do. And so God opened up doors. I sold bonds and got it all laid out inside and out. And then the men went to work and laid brick and built the upstairs and put the floor down and all like that. And got the permits and things for the baths and showers and all that good stuff.
Oh, yes. The Glen Iris Baptist Camp. What a sacred place. Oh, my goodness. It was very primitive. The word would have to be primitive.
But it was adequate, and I was in charge of the meals. We would go and stay for 5 days.
I can remember sleeping under mattresses because I was so cold, and wondering if the young people that I was supposed to be guarding were freezing.
And the only time we had to clean on it, the senior class was sent out like the Friday before camp, and we worked and worked and worked.
I can remember the buses losing brakes and the stories they told of buses rolling down mountains backwards and what they were trying to do to stop them.
There was a fireplace on each end of the lodge there, and we stayed in that, and they had fires going, and we had sleeping blankets on top of tables and froze to death.
We actually made, I think, some of the bunk houses out there. And that was kind of neat because we slept in one and they made one.
We had to swim in a strip pit one year. The only thing was, when we got out there, it wasn't deep enough to swim in. And so Beverly Smith, who's Beverly Oliver now, she became the preacher, and they all lined up and she baptized them.
I remember the canteens, the canteen time where after the services you could go up there and buy candy and everything.
I can remember all of the skits that we produced and that the high schoolers produced, and how funny they were.
We had classes. I taught some of the girls' classes, Bible classes in the morning. And then at night, we had regular camp meeting services. And we would have different preachers, local preachers, to come in. And we just sung very spiritual songs. But it was in a rustic tabernacle, if you can call it that. It was a brush arbor. Brother Roloff came, and his girls came and sung the Honeybee Quartet. And we just had a lot of good preaching, sweet times. The mosquitoes were bad, so Brother Fred Weldon would crank his big old truck, and he had a tank, and he would drive by,
spraying out all of these clouds of poison, trying to kill all the mosquitoes that were attacking us.
And it would just fog the whole tabernacle. And we would be trying to sing, and the preacher would be trying to preach, and all this fog would come up under there.
It was still in its infancy when I was there. They were building a swimming pool. I remember they had the foundation poured and everything, and they had someone to donate a big tanker truck, and we went down and got a pump, and we pumped water from a pond down close to the facility, and pumped it from that tank into the swimming pool, and it took, I don't know how many trips, but the water was murky, it was dirty.
He fills it, and then he shocks it. Well, when he shocks it, all that red stuff falls to the bottom. Well, you got to vacuum it all out. So for about 3 or 4 days, there was a crew of about 5 or 6 of us. That's all we did. We got it to where it was pristine, and then the filters plugged up, and then we got red again.
I don't know that I ever got in it. I may have, but I'm just sure there were things in it that would be the subject of biology experiments.
I remember the teachers of our school. It seemed like a big family here, and every year we would add to that family.
I worked with people who really did live what they preached. They didn't just say, you do it. They did it too.
And to see people that are still doing the work ministry all these years later.
Being a teacher has given me several college educations.
You know, I have to go back and say, Brother LeGrand, simply because the relationship we had was so unique.
Probably Miss Leith. The 2 reasons: number one, she's a really good teacher, and secondly, she's a really nice-looking teacher, and she's very pleasant to the eyes.
Being in classes like Miss Sutton's class, everybody who went through 2nd grade always heard the dark woods and there was a dark house, and then so she was a good storyteller, and she could get you intrigued by a lot of her stories.
We had many good teachers, but I have to say probably my favorite would have to be Mrs. Oliver, who was Miss Leith at the time.
Brother Grant loved the special class, and he would interview them on the radio, and you never knew what they were going to say. And he included them in everything.
We had candy sales. He would take us all to McDonald's for Sundays, and we thought we were the biggest things in the world for ice cream sundaes. So, I mean, he really knew how to get down on a level with kids.
He had several mottos, and one of them was 100% participation. He wanted everybody in on everything. He wanted, if it didn't matter what it was, he just wanted everybody to get to do it.
The one thing I remember the most is teaching in this basement, being in the middle of such a serious discussion. I think it was with 5th or 6th graders. I did teach some younger children when I first came. And he chased a guy in who was wearing a gorilla suit and shot him dead in front of me. And I remember it scared me so badly, but my kids, my children in my classroom loved it. I really was traumatized a little over it because it just stunned me so badly.
When it got close to Sweetheart's Banquet and stuff like that, Brother Jack would always get up and try and coax somebody into talking someone into asking a girl right there from the platform.
He would jokingly ask who was going to the Valentine banquet, and he would say, you and you are going together, and you, and he saw that I didn't have a date. He said, we got to get Jelly Roll a date, and he said, Jelly Roll, you and Sheila, y'all going to the banquet together. And I wanted to crawl under that bench.
Sometimes he didn't have to say something. Sometimes he'd just give you that look. And that look was enough to stop you dead in your tracks.
Oh, I love Brother LeGrand's chapels on Friday. Oh, he was wonderful. He would say, say this with me now, God hates rebellion. He'd shake his face, God hates rebellion. He said, now the next point is, God hates a quitter. Say it with me now, God hates a quitter. He hates a quitter. He'd shake his face, and everybody else, especially the kindergartners, would try to do it too. And we were always pointed to seek the Lord, which I can think of no better advice to give any kid of any age.
One of the students got mad at the girls, and at the end of the day, went into the bathroom upstairs here and plugged the water and left the sink running. Well, at that time, the office was in this down here, and all the records and everything was down here. Everything we needed to run the school and church, and the water came down overnight. It flooded everything down here in this room, and it was horrible.
And we were on our way home, and the bus broke down. And I forgot who was driving, but all the guys get out and push that bus down along the side of the interstate. And you're talking about a nightmare. Oh, and I can't remember if the girls were still on the bus. We were having to push the girls on the bus as well. The girls were off the bus, but we had 15 or 20 guys out behind the bus pushing that bus down the interstate. Glen Iris decided they wanted to have a tackle football team. In the past, they had flag football, but they never had a tackle football team. Brother Roberts was going to be the coach, and prior to that, I had very little knowledge of football. Brother Roberts would run us and run us and run us, and I was so tired. And I was the only senior on the team, and the way that we had positions, Brother Roberts would just look at you, and me being a big boy, I was probably about 225 at that time, and he'd say, "You need to be on the line." When it came time for specialty teams, punting, he lined us all the boys up and said, "Okay, kick the ball, see who can kick the furthest out of maybe 10 tries." And I kicked the ball the furthest. And then we had a kickoff, kicking off of a tee, and did the same thing. And so I wound up being the captain of the football team. I played fullback on offense. I played nose guard on defense. I was the kickoff specialist, and I was the punter. We had a perfect season that year. We were 0-10. Wow. We didn't win a game. We came close.
I worked in the school and coached the flag football team. We actually had played regular tackle football while I was in school for at least, I think, 3 years. And I played on those tackle football teams. And then they went from tackle to flag football. And I coached that year, and we were undefeated state champions that year. And that was 81, I think.
Paul Steimer was a basketball coach in junior varsity. And then Steve Cluth was my varsity basketball coach.
We played basketball at the YMCA. We went down to 5 Points Y and played down there for our home games. When we did our practice, we did it right out there where we parked cars. We had 2 goals out there, and we played. And the girls, when they did their volleyball, they'd stretch a net up out there, and they'd play out there. And it would be cold or all kind of stuff. And you didn't want to fall, because if you fell, you're going to get skinned up.
The whole choir ministry, the competing part of choir, actually began when Kathy Lamb, as I recall, was away at college, and we needed a choir, and I got elected. And as soon as she came back and came on staff, then she became the director of the high school choir, and I'm thinking that's when the junior high choir formed. And so naturally I was the candidate for that one.
Work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son. As for God, his way is perfect.